Have you ever wondered what really happened when Lucifer, the most beautiful angel in heaven, rose up in rebellion against God? We often hear about the fall of Satan, about angels who turned against their creator, and the great battle in heaven. But here's a question most people never ask. Where was Michael, the archangel, during all of this? Did he just stand back and watch? Was he silent in the shadows? Or was he the one chosen to confront Lucifer face to face? This isn't just a story about angels in heaven. It's a story about pride, loyalty, and the cost of choosing sides. And as we peel back the layers of this mystery, you'll start to see that what happened then still echoes into our lives today. So stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you won't just understand where Michael was during Lucifer's rebellion, you'll understand why his role matters to your life right now. Before we dive in, I want to quickly say, welcome to Gospel Insights, where we uncover the hidden treasures and untold stories of the Bible. If you love deep biblical storytelling that brings Scripture to life, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you don't miss any of our weekly episodes. Now, let's step into heaven, before the rebellion. Close your eyes for a moment and picture heaven, not the way movies show it, but the way Scripture hints at it. A place where light has no shadows, where every breath is filled with peace, where every sound is music. The angels weren't just silent figures with wings. They were living beings of power and beauty. They laughed, they sang, they carried out God's commands with joy. Imagine an endless choir of voices blending together in harmony so pure, they made even the mountains of heaven tremble in awe. And in that perfect order, two names stood out: Lucifer and Michael. Lucifer, the light-bearer, stood dazzling in splendor. Scripture describes him as adorned with precious stones, covered in glory, radiant like the morning sun. If you saw him, you'd think he was the masterpiece of creation itself. He was gifted beyond measure. Music flowed from him like rivers of fire and light. His voice could lead choirs of angels in songs that reached the farthest corners of eternity. He wasn't just admired, he was loved, trusted, honored. Then there was Michael. Different. He didn't shine with the same artistic brilliance as Lucifer. Michael's greatness wasn't in beauty but in loyalty. He was a warrior, a commander, a protector. His presence wasn't about dazzling you. It was about making you feel safe, secure, anchored. Michael's strength wasn't flashy. It was steady. Where Lucifer inspired admiration, Michael inspired trust. Together they reflected two sides of heaven's perfection: worship and protection, praise and loyalty. And under God's throne, they both flourished. Can you imagine it? A place without conflict, without jealousy, without division. A place where every angel felt purpose and belonging. A place where love was the law of existence. But here's something worth thinking about. Do you know that feeling when everything in your life seems stable? When you're at peace and you think nothing can shake it? That was heaven. And yet, even in the most perfect environment ever created, pride found a way to grow. And that's the mystery, because before the storm there were no warning signs. Lucifer seemed flawless. The angels around him never imagined betrayal, and Michael, ever watchful, could not yet act, because rebellion had not yet been revealed. The peace was real, but it was also fragile. Because pride can hide in the most beautiful places. And soon, that peace would be shattered. Pride doesn't explode all at once. It begins as a whisper. It begins as a thought. And that's exactly how Lucifer's rebellion started. Think about it. Lucifer had everything: beauty, wisdom, music, influence. He stood near the very throne of God. He was admired by the angels, respected as a leader. By all accounts, he should have been the most grateful being in existence. But somewhere inside, a seed was planted. A thought crept in. Why should all worship go to God? Why not me? It's almost unthinkable, isn't it? In the very presence of God's glory, Lucifer began to hunger for something more, for something that was never his to have. He didn't want just to serve. He wanted to rule. The prophet Isaiah captures Lucifer's heart in those chilling words, "I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High." Notice the words, "I will." Pride always begins with I. It always points inward instead of upward. And here's where it gets personal. Have you ever felt that tug inside of you? That voice that says, "I deserve more. I deserve the credit. Why should they get the attention?" That same seed of pride that destroyed Lucifer whispers into our lives today. But back to heaven. Imagine how subtle it was at first. Lucifer didn't march into God's throne room and announce war. No, he nursed his pride quietly. He allowed it to grow in his heart, feeding it with envy, with comparison, with ambition. Outwardly, he still led choirs of angels in worship. His voice still rose in beauty before the throne. But inwardly, his songs were no longer about God. They were about himself. And here's where Michael comes into the picture. Michael, the warrior, the loyal one, must have seen hints of something shifting. Perhaps he noticed that Lucifer's words were changing. Perhaps he saw the way other angels looked at Lucifer almost in awe. But here's the truth. Michael could not act until God's timing allowed it. Because rebellion hadn't yet revealed itself in full. Pride was still hiding in shadows. This is what makes the story so powerful. Pride can exist in the holiest places, in the most beautiful hearts, and still corrupt everything it touches. Lucifer, once the light-bearer, had begun his descent, and the peace of heaven was about to crack. Pride doesn't stay hidden forever. When it grows unchecked, it always finds a way to spill out. And for Lucifer, it began with whispers. He didn't declare war openly at first. No, that would have been too obvious. Instead, he began sowing seeds of doubt among the angels. One conversation at a time. A question here, a suggestion there, a subtle twist of words that made others pause and wonder. Can't you just hear him? Why does God get all the glory? Haven't we done enough to deserve recognition too? Why should Michael be the commander of heaven's armies? Am I not just as powerful? What if there's more out there? What if God is holding us back? It wasn't rage, it was persuasion, a quiet, cunning, almost charming kind of rebellion. Lucifer didn't look like a villain. He looked like a visionary, someone who wanted change. And here's the dangerous thing. He was convincing. The angels admired him already. His beauty, his voice, his leadership, it gave weight to his words. So when he whispered, angels listened. Can you imagine the confusion? Angels who had only ever known peace, who had only ever known God's love, suddenly hearing doubts for the first time. For the first time they wondered, is there something more? Could God really be holding back from us? This is how sin always works. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It plants questions that eat away at trust. It makes us second-guess the very foundation we stand on. And where was Michael in all of this? Watching, waiting, silent, but steadfast. Michael wasn't one to argue with whispers. His loyalty wasn't shaken. But perhaps he felt the weight of what was coming. Perhaps he looked at Lucifer, once his brother in arms, and saw the dangerous fire growing in his eyes. It must have been heartbreaking to see an angel so gifted, so radiant, turn from the very God who gave him everything. To see friends, fellow angels, begin to waver, begin to question, begin to lean toward Lucifer's promises. And here's the piercing question for us. Have you ever had someone you loved slowly drift away? Someone you trusted who began listening to voices that pulled them from the truth? That's what Michael must have felt. The sting of betrayal and the silence before the storm. Lucifer's whispers were no longer whispers. They were becoming a movement. And soon, the peace of heaven would be torn apart. This is one of the most haunting parts of the story. While Lucifer was whispering, persuading, gathering followers, Michael remained silent. Why? Why didn't the great warrior of heaven rise up immediately, draw his sword, and silence Lucifer's lies? Why didn't he crush the rebellion before it grew? The answer is simple, and yet profound. Because loyalty isn't proven by force, it's proven by choice. God could have silenced Lucifer with a single word. Michael could have ended the whispers in an instant. But then, what would that prove? If love is forced, it is no longer love. If loyalty is demanded, it is no longer loyalty. The angels had to choose. Lucifer had to reveal his heart, and only then would justice be clear. So Michael waited, not out of weakness, but out of obedience. His silence wasn't fear, it was faith. Faith that God's timing is always perfect. Faith that truth does not need to panic in the face of lies. Can you imagine how difficult that must have been? To watch Lucifer corrupt friends, to see angels you once trained beside begin to waver, and to remain still, to hear rumors swirl through heaven's halls, to feel the tension rising like a storm, and yet, not act until God commanded. That's a lesson for us too, isn't it? How many times have we wanted to rush in, to fix things immediately, to fight battles in our own strength, when God was asking us to wait? Waiting doesn't mean God is absent. Sometimes waiting is the test of whether we truly trust Him. Michael understood this. He wasn't silent because he was powerless. He was silent because he was loyal. His sword would not be drawn until God gave the word. And in that silence, the stage was set. Lucifer had gathered enough followers. The whispers had become shouts. The rebellion could no longer hide in shadows. The time for silence was ending. The time for war was about to begin. The silence of waiting was over. The whispers had grown into open defiance. The unthinkable had happened. Angels, once loyal to God, now stood behind Lucifer. What began as pride in one heart had become a full rebellion against the throne of heaven. And then, it happened. Scripture says it so powerfully. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. Can you picture it? Heaven, the place of peace, the place of glory, suddenly transformed into a battlefield, not of flesh and blood, but of spirit and power. Light against darkness, truth against deception, loyalty against pride. Lucifer, now no longer the light-bearer but the dragon, stood with a third of heaven's angels at his back. His beauty had twisted into something darker, fiercer, filled with rage and jealousy. His voice, once leading choirs of praise, now roared with defiance against his creator. And opposite him, Michael, calm, unmoved, radiant with loyalty. He didn't need flowery speeches. He didn't need to prove himself. He stood in God's authority, and that was enough. When Michael drew his sword, he wasn't fighting in his own strength. He was fighting in the name of the Almighty. The battle was fierce. Imagine angels, powerful beyond human comprehension, clashing in a storm of light and fire. Imagine the sound, a roar like thunder, a clash like mountains colliding. Imagine the heartbreak of brother against brother, of friends now turned enemies. But through it all, Michael never wavered. Scripture makes it clear. Lucifer did not prevail, because pride, no matter how dazzling, cannot defeat truth. Rebellion, no matter how loud, cannot overthrow loyalty. Michael stood firm, and with the power of God behind him, he cast Lucifer down. No longer son of the morning, no longer radiant with glory, but fallen, broken, a deceiver, cast out of heaven, destined for destruction. And here's the part that grips me. It wasn't Michael's strength that won the war, it was his obedience. He didn't fight for his own glory. He fought because he was loyal to the throne, and that made all the difference. And so the greatest battle in heaven's history ended with victory, not for the brightest, not for the most talented, but for the most faithful. Lucifer had been defeated, but the story was far from over. When the smoke of heaven's war cleared, the lines had been drawn forever. On one side, Lucifer and his fallen angels cast down, stripped of their glory, bound to the shadows. On the other, Michael, standing firm, victorious not because of his brilliance, but because of one simple, unshakable truth. Loyalty to God never fails. Think about it. Lucifer had beauty. He had music. He had influence. He had charisma. He had a following. By all appearances, he had everything needed to win. But he lacked the one thing that mattered most: humility, obedience, faithfulness. Michael, on the other hand, didn't rely on himself. He didn't rely on charm or ambition. He relied on God. And that's what made the difference. Because the victory wasn't about who shined the brightest, it was about who stood the firmest. And this is where it gets personal. How often do we measure success by the wrong things? By talent, by applause, by popularity, by how many people notice us. But Michael's victory reminds us, the greatest power in the universe isn't beauty or talent or popularity. It's loyalty to God. That's why Revelation says, "They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony." Did you catch that? Victory doesn't come from us. It comes from God, and from holding to the truth of his word. Michael's story proves that. His sword wasn't sharp because of his own strength. It was sharp because it was wielded in obedience to the King of Kings. Now let's pause for a moment. Imagine what it felt like for Michael after the battle. He wasn't just standing over an enemy. He was standing over a fallen brother, someone he once sang with, someone who once stood beside him in God's courts. This wasn't a victory of arrogance. It was a victory of sorrow and resolve. Because true loyalty isn't proud, it's humble. And isn't that what our lives are about too? We fight battles every day, not with literal swords, but with choices. Whose voice will we listen to? The voice of pride, ambition, and selfishness, or the voice of humility, obedience, and loyalty to God? Michael's victory is an invitation to remember that the battles in our lives are not ours alone. We don't win by being the strongest, the smartest, or the most impressive. We win by standing under God's authority, just as Michael did. And here's a sobering thought. Lucifer lost heaven, not because he wasn't powerful enough, but because he wasn't faithful enough. Michael kept heaven, not because he was dazzling, but because he was loyal. That's the lesson. That's the echo of this story in our lives today. Victory belongs to the loyal. The war in heaven may feel distant, like something that happened long ago in a place far beyond our reach. But the truth is, its echoes still shake the world we live in today. Lucifer was cast out of heaven, but he wasn't destroyed. His whispers didn't end in the courts of God. They descended to the earth. And ever since, he's been at work, using the same tactics he used against the angels. Whispers, questions, doubts, lies. Think about it. How often do those same thoughts creep into our hearts? You don't need God. You deserve more. Why should you obey when everyone else does what they want? It's the same rebellion, recycled through generations, pressing against our souls every single day. That's why Michael's story matters. Because the battle he fought up there is the battle we fight down here. We may not swing heavenly swords or command armies of angels, but we face the same choice. Will we bow to pride, or will we stand in loyalty? Will we trust God when the world tells us not to? Will we stay faithful when whispers of temptation surround us? And here's the hope. Just as Michael did not fight in his own strength, neither do we. The book of Revelation says God's people overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. That means your victory, your ability to resist temptation, to stay loyal, to keep standing when it feels easier to fall, comes not from you but from Christ living in you. Michael's name literally means, "Who is like God?" And that's the question his life still asks us today. Who is like God? Who else deserves our loyalty? Who else deserves our worship? Who else deserves our trust? Not Lucifer, not pride, not the lies of this world, only God. So when you feel the pull of temptation, remember Michael. When you hear whispers of doubt, remember Michael. When you feel small, outnumbered, or weak, remember Michael. His story is proof that loyalty, not talent, wins the battle. And that same victory is offered to you, right now, right here, in the struggles you face today. The war in heaven may have begun long ago, but its echo is inside every one of us. And like Michael, you and I must choose where we stand. So, where was Michael during Lucifer's rebellion? He was where he had always been, standing firm, loyal, ready, waiting for God's command. And when the moment came, he became heaven's defender, the one who cast down pride, deception, and rebellion. But this story isn't just about ancient history. It isn't just a heavenly drama tucked away in the Bible. It's about us. It's about the battles we face every single day. Because let's be honest, Lucifer's whispers haven't stopped. He may have been cast out of heaven, but his voice still echoes on earth. He still whispers lies. You deserve more. You don't need God. You can do it on your own. Why should he get the glory when you've worked so hard? Those whispers still turn hearts. They still plant doubt. They still lead people away. And here's the truth. Every single one of us stands in the same choice as the angels did. Will we listen to pride, or will we stand with loyalty? Will we chase our own glory, or will we remain faithful to the one who made us? Michael's silence teaches us patience. His sword teaches us obedience. His victory teaches us that no matter how dark the battle, God's truth always prevails. And here's the part that I don't want you to miss. Michael didn't win because he was extraordinary. He won because he was faithful. And that means you and I can do the same. You may not feel like the strongest. You may not feel like the most gifted. You may not have all the answers. But if you stand with God, if you hold to His word, you are already on the side of victory. The story of Michael and Lucifer is not just about angels. It's about a choice. Lucifer chose pride, and it destroyed him. Michael chose loyalty, and it exalted him. And today, you and I are making that same choice with every word we speak, every thought we entertain, and every action we take. So as we close, let me ask you, where will you stand? When the whispers of pride come, will you listen? Or will you, like Michael, stay faithful, even when it costs you? Because one day, the war that started in heaven will end once and for all. And when that day comes, only one thing will matter. Not how bright you shined, not how loud you sang, but whether you remained loyal to the King. Michael stood. Michael fought. Michael won, not for himself, but for God. And so can you.